I'm calling to order the July 6th Planning Commission meeting at 6:06 p.m. I'd like to start before the intros and announcements, just quickly proposing that we shift the order of the in the organizational meeting of the elections with the reviewing the bylaws and rules of procedure, putting that first. That seems more appropriate to me on second thought, because part of that talks about the role of those three officers. So unless Gary or Sarah or Prudence is opposed to that shift around, or Sue.
Well, we know that Dan Handy is coming on, but he's just going to be a couple minutes late.
Right.
Do you still want to do that first? Do you want to? Oh. There is a member of the public here.
Right. So maybe we'll put public comments number one first. We'll do announcements, and then a public comment if the member of public wants to, and then we'll see if Dan comes on for organizational meeting. If not,
I could be long-winded if that would help.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think we're held too strictly to. I think technically we're supposed to only do agenda readjustments. At changes in the very beginning of the meeting. But I think if we want to delay a little bit for Dan, we can do that as we go. But anyway. Let's move on to the intros and announcements. I think we're going to scratch the intros part because that was mainly meant for our new Planning Commission member, Todd Murchison, to get to meet us and vice versa. But he wasn't able to make it. He discussed that with Sue and with I. So hopefully we'll see him next meeting. Let's move on to announcements. And then we'll do public comment right after that. Sue, do you have anything?
The only thing I'd announce is that our bylaw modernization consultant isn't here tonight. She has prepared the technical review that I will be getting out to all of you. So if you could take a look at it, send me any questions or comments, and just be thinking this is the document that's going to help direct the work that she will be doing. So if you have, strong feelings about something, we're probably not going to go through it line by line at the August meeting. So if you could you're going to have it in plenty of time in advance, if you could put some homework in, and, if you've got some questions, comments, responses, just be prepared with that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just tack on to that, commissioners, that if you'll recall, the Place Sense's work plan for this bylaw modernization grant said that the July meeting would be the technical review, and we were going to schedule an hour, but something came up for her. So like Sue said, that's going to be delayed to August. But the whole project itself isn't going to get delayed. It's fine. But yeah, we'll just be prepared with homework in advance of that meeting. Okay, any other announcements related to the Planning Commission? Mm-hmm. Prudence.
I just have a question. Sue, were you asking for our comments on the technical review in advance or just to be prepared?
A little bit. If you've got questions and you want to send them to me ahead of time, I can share them with her just so she's prepared. But otherwise, it can just be, giving her direction at the meeting.
Thank you.
Sue, could you shift the view to not be speaker view?
Yes.
Just so I can see everyone equally if hands or emoji hands are up. Okay.
Can you see this okay?
I can, yep. All right. Usually we have public comment at the end, but it's shiftable for sure when there's members of the public who want to speak sooner about a non-agenda item. And certainly agenda items can be spoken about during the agenda item. Kurt, do you have something to comment on that's not an agenda item?
Yeah, I have a couple questions.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kurt Dimes, District 2. I work with Brattleboro Common Sense. 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we proposed rent control and eviction control legislation to the Select Board. And the Select Board has it took over a year and a half for them to come up with their proper objections. They've been stalling and not addressing both of the proposals. There are some legal hitches, but I think in an emergency, they should have the attitude of being ready to bend the rules or look into ways around them. But there's no evidence of willingness to do that. They're not taking the housing crisis as an emergency. And I also think that they're not doing it with respect to the proposals that I've made about changing the zoning laws so that recreation vehicles and trailers can be used for residences on an emergency basis. I just hear that, that would interfere with parking ordinances. So what I wanted to ask was some help in motivating the select board and information about where I can learn what restrictions there are. I was looking in the codes today, and I find an entire section has been superseded by state law, and then I can't find anything in state law. It's just like, it's a whole lot of work for me. I'm not expert in that, and I always find that the online statutes rather bewildering. So I thought maybe somebody on the commission might be more familiar with the laws about parking recreational vehicles and using them on private land within town limits. So that's my big ask.
I know the select board says, thank you for your, and not specific to you, but just public comments in general. Thank you for your comment. We can't discuss it because of, it's not Warren's subject, but I think we hold ourselves to a little more flexible
They didn't, they weren't that casual about it, and neither were we.
Okay.
I've had consultants, from California to vet the proposal, and from Boston. And I've submitted in writing 2 different versions of the legislation. And then they take several months to get back to me. And then they say, we're going to wait for the rental survey.
Kurt,
when the rental survey was delivered, they wanted to do some other complaint. So they really.
Yeah. No, Kurt, I was just saying that about open meeting law and warning because I feel comfortable doing a little back and forth right now. We're asking questions or what staff thinks about that. Like what our regs. I know no one has all the regs memorized in their head right now, but I think I responded with my thoughts, right, Kurt, by email and what was it that I said that our regs.
You suggested that I look up the zoning ordinances.
No, okay.
And I hadn't done that because why? I just assumed that there was. I thought it was just generally true all across the nation that there's laws about, that there are ordinances about using recreational vehicles as permanent residents. I had assumed that. And now I find out that other towns do have laws, that say, you can do 6 months, or you can do a month, you can do a couple of weeks, you can't do it. I don't find any information in our own code of ordinances.
Right.
Well, that's all I had to ask. I'm glad to hear your comments later. And if that is your business, that is the proper business of the Planning Commission to review or propose rental legislation, I'd be glad to show you a copy of what's happening, what I'd like to do, what BCS would like to propose, and a state version which recently was vetoed by the governor. I'd be glad to show those to you.
Well, there certainly are things that, related to our work that sometimes we've sent recommendations to the select board about, even if they aren't strictly our powers and duties. Why don't you send those things to us, to staff, and we'll review it. Yeah. So regarding the RVs, I think what I said in that email. I mean, I'm not the end all be all final say on interpreting regs, but I think most of the hang up, if one wanted to move in that direction, is state codes. The building code not allowing an RV to be like a permanent residence. But as far as if someone could get away with it in their own driveway for indefinitely, I don't know.
Yeah, and anyway, I think I've taken a
Okay.
bit of your time. I'll just listen for a while.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you.
Well, if we're still waiting for Dan, maybe we could do the minutes first before the organizational meeting.
Sure.
We have 2 minutes, or minutes of 2 meetings, the June 6th regular meeting and the June 20th joint meeting with the DRB and DRC. Why don't folks suggest any edits or questions with the first one, the June 6th regular meeting? I'll say that where it says that, for me, that I would also like to review cannabis zoning at an upcoming meeting, considering the May presentation. I'm pretty sure, maybe I wasn't clear. I think what I was proposing was that if commissioners have, any continuing concerns or edits to the plan with dealing with cannabis in our zoning, to bring them to the staff or to me, and then, we'll put something on the agenda. But absent anything, then we're kind of done with cannabis for now. So if anyone is wondering why there isn't cannabis on this meeting's agenda, it's because, I didn't receive anyone's proposals.
Sorry, I'm just struggling to find where
It's in that
was
under
written.
announcements, the middle sentence, June 6th.
Okay. Do you have a proposed
Oh, sure.
change?
I think, yeah, because he would also like to entertain any cannabis zoning proposals at an upcoming meeting.
Potential?
Yeah, any potential cannabis zoning proposals. Maybe that's not what I said, but I looked back at my notes, and that's what I planned to say at least last meeting. So.
And it will actually come up tonight,
Okay.
just in the review of the joint meeting that we had. So,
Oh, right.
yeah,
Yeah, kind of indirectly it will.
yeah.
Okay. Anything else for the June 6 minutes? Meeting minutes? Okay, how about a motion?
Motion that we approve the June 6, 2022, is it June 20th also?
No, not yet.
Just the 6th?
Yep.
Okay, minutes.
Maybe we could have done them together, but
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Raise your hand, please. That's everyone? Okay, all 4. How about the June 20th meeting minutes?
So can I just note that there were only 3 planning commissioners there, so
Oh.
I actually don't think that
So
we
we don't have to
can,
review it.
we can review these. I mean, I don't know if I can take them to the DRB. There were 4 DRB members. It would be nice to get an approved set of minutes from that, but having only 3 planning commissioners, it's not appropriate, I think, at this point.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean,
Sorry for that.
just to be technical, there isn't, I mean, I know it's our practice to approve minutes, but I don't think there's anything in statute or even our bylaws that says minutes need to be approved, right? Except there's a chair's duty to sign minutes, but I've never
Yeah, right.
seen anyone do that.
I think that's old fashioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that, whether
Right.
it's actually a requirement to
Okay.
approve them. Or if it's just been
I
customary.
think it's good practice.
Yeah.
Okay. Dan's still not here. I mean, should we start the organizational meeting, but put the elections in the last?
Or you can move forward, however you want to do. I mean, it's 20 after, so.
Right. Yeah, well, let's review the bylaws and rules of procedure. How about that? Okay. Hopefully everyone saw my proposals to change the bylaws, some parts of it. I guess I'll just start off with that, and then people can speak to any of my edits or just any questions about the bylaws in general, and maybe Sue, you being, having long tenure as far as having a relationship with this commission, you can point out anything that you feel is really important that maybe doesn't come up just through this review of the changes. So hopefully everyone has it in front of them. I wonder if we should do screen view, screen share.
Give me a minute.
I will say that I made a couple mistakes with my changes. So hopefully you all weren't racking your brains too much. Not that they were like incomprehensible, but they're kind of, anyway, you'll see. Oh, but for people that don't, for the member of the public, Kurt, once a year we do our organizational meeting where we do kind of the governmental things and review bylaws and quickly review the town plan and elect officers and review the state's open meeting law. So,
Very important.
yep, we're going to try to just crank this out before 6:50 or 7 o'clock. Do the PDF if you, well, whichever looks
go
good.
back.
Whichever looks good.
Yeah, the PDF probably.
I have it here.
Well, let's just go with this.
Oh, so in general, what I did here, I sent you guys by email. We had two documents. I mean, the bylaws are the real official kind of legal ones, and there was the rules of procedure too. And I saw some overlap and redundancy, and so I combined them. But anyway, starting at the top here, it did say that the commission shall have not less than 3 nor more than 9 members. But our charter explicitly says 7, and that's the the law of the land for us. So there's really no sense in having it be 3 to 9, because the 7 supersedes state statute, which allows for 3 to 9. So until the charter changes, I mean that supersedes statute. So I figured we might as well just write 7 right there, and that it's established by the charter. And anyone feel free to interrupt as I'm going down. For section 3, duties of officers, I just wanted to.
Sorry.
Yep.
Hey, Tom, can we share screen this? Because I'm not sure where this document landed.
sure.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was sharing the screen.
No.
I brought it up on my screen in here, but I missed the share screen
Close.
function. Sorry about that.
One more step. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Tom's docs.
Okay, so there's
Okay,
the
great.
first
And
change.
now I can see you all too, but feel free to just yell out if need be. And then, so there was that part about the number of members. Now moving down to section 3, that part for the duties and powers of the officers of the commission, some of which may be delegated to planning staff. I put that in, not that it changes anything, but in my understanding, by adding that, but it just kind of makes it clearer. I feel like some new commissioners come on and they're like, oh, look at all these duties the clerk has, but then, at least in the 4 years I've been here, a clerk has never done anything clerk-like, because everyone just seems happy to have staff do those things.
That's great, yeah.
And so I crossed off all of number 3. I did not mean to. I just meant to cross off the including minutes part, because I've never seen the chair ever sign minutes. And I don't think that's a necessity either. So it's just an issue of clarity. So if we go forward and approve these changes, I hope we all just consider that line we'll just be crossing out including minutes, not the rest. And then, hopefully we all review the duties of the chair and vice chair and clerk, because we'll be electing those soon. I had a couple thoughts. Well, maybe I'll stick with the edits. Okay, if we keep going down there to the regular meetings, that, since COVID started, that's kind of been outdated with meeting in the community room at the Brooks Memorial Library.
Excuse me, I just want to pull those shades. They're really.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, please do. And it seems like, we can edit the bylaws, so we might as well just, if we ever go back to the library, we can just change it back. And then I added the ending at 8 p.m. because that was in our rules of procedure, and I put it there where it seemed relevant, and if we keep going down, we'll see the other parts of the rules of procedure added in. So
Should we add something about a
Sure.
hybrid meeting?
Oh,
I don't know if that's, I know that was sort of legally allowed because of COVID, and my understanding is that we'll probably continue that unless things have changed.
right. Yeah, I mean,
Is that a norm
So-
from now on?
I think it is.
So the one thing, as I was reviewing the open meeting law, certainly we have the authority to have hybrid meeting right now where members of the planning commission are participating remotely. It's not clear to me, and I probably want to research it a little bit, come January 15, 2023, if commission members can still be remote, or do all commission members need to be here, but we can have it hybrid for the public? So it was a question that came up as I was preparing for tonight. So before we make a change on that, I think I'd like to get clarity on that.
Okay. Makes sense to me.
Probably did.
And if you were kind of thinking that, Sarah, for the, education of the public, I don't know. I think the public just mainly looks at our agenda, which does say hybrid, so, and, new commissioners will quickly get up to speed, so maybe we'll see what happens, like Sue says, after the statute change or expiration, whichever it was.
Okay, thank you.
So moving down to section 8, meeting notice, as far as, warning a meeting. That paragraph is pretty much straight out of the rules of procedure. This seemed to be the relevant section of the bylaws to put that into, and I think it's worthwhile. And then with quorum, here's kind of a tricky thing. Sue later found for me that the Secretary of State says that there is no ambiguity, or they define what a quorum is, which is a majority of the members, of the voting members, whether, not considering vacancies. So to me, it seemed pretty ambiguous, so I was writing this in for us to choose an option. But I think the original language should stay, except I think it'd be clearer if it says what the Secretary of State's language said, which was the Secretary of State said a quorum is a majority of total positions, regardless of vacancies and recusals. So if we have the wording be, at any meeting of the commission, a quorum shall consist of a majority of the total positions of voting members of the commission, then I think that's really clear.
So it'd always have to be 4,
Exactly,
regardless of if we have 5 members or 7 members.
right.
Can we just use that language, like word for word, that the Secretary of State uses?
I think so, yeah. Quorum is majority of total positions regardless of vacancies or recusals. Except we also have in our bylaws earlier this term voting members. So that's why I'd like to just keep things consistent and make it be quorum is majority of total positions of voting members regardless of vacancies or recusals. So I know we just
adding the regardless of vacancies, I think,
Yeah.
for me, makes it very clear.
right.
Because if you say voting member positions, it might, for me, it's like, oh, is that positions that are filled or all positions? So
Right.
having that thing about vacancy, I think, would be clear.
Right. And if the select board ever chose to make 2 of our 7 members non-voting ex officio members, then that would throw in some ambiguity too. So that's why having the voting members in that. So what we're considering now isn't, the literal wording there, but my interpretation of the last part of our bylaws about 5 days advance notice being required. I I don't interpret that incredibly strictly. So I think the wording that I had here, although I was kind of off, in this document that you see in front of you, it was getting at the heart of what we're considering right now.
So Tom, on
yeah.
the quorum, so the problem is if we have vacancies, we could end up not being able to take any action because, we have 2 vacancies and there's 5. If we have to have 4, we've got 5 voting members and 1 person, 2 people can't make it, then we can't take action. So that's a requirement of the Secretary of State?
It is, yep.
Okay, so we don't have any choice on that. Okay.
Right.
In fact, there are committees and commissions for the town that haven't met in years because they don't have a quorum.
Yes, I have anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess there's pros and cons to each way. It's my understanding some states do it differently. But this is what we're stuck with. So what we're left with is at least making it clear, which I think we're doing with that wording. Did you take that down? The exact wording I said?
I did.
Okay, great.
So that being said, it is now officiated in that sense. I thought in some places, I don't know, I heard 3, but okay, but that's the state.
Right.
That's a whole different monster.
Yeah, so no matter the number of serving commissioners, quorum always will be 4 for us, unless our charter ever changes the number of commissioners.
Okay, for planning commission, okay.
Yep. And then section 10, voting, this was kind of similar. I just added voting in front because, there could technically be non-voting members. Obviously, if it's in a section called voting, but I just wanted to keep the terminology consistent. And then, okay, I think this part's still relevant, where I added, okay, it says the affirmative vote of at least a majority of the voting members, and I added currently serving or currently attending shall be necessary for the adoption of any resolution or other voting matter. Because without choosing one of those, I think it is ambiguous if it means a majority of the 7-member body or a majority of those attending.
It's a majority of the 7-member body. So it's I'm not sure currently serving because that doesn't capture that there could be vacancies.
Right. So once again,
Right. So
I guess
it's
it
not
should be
that.
a majority of the total positions.
Yes.
So the same wording in there for clarity. Okay. So that's essentially what my proposal is. Okay, and then moving down to section 14, those parts added, the formatting was a little hard to do, but those are right from our rules of procedure. There already was a rules of procedure section in the bylaws, but it was short. It was just related to modifications to Robert's Rules of Order for small assemblies. But I took the rules of procedure for proceeding past 8 p.m. and for supporting documentation and for public participation and tacked it in there. And then along with all this, I just proposed that we get rid of the rules of procedure document.
So
Just
on
have this
number
one.
3, ex officios, we don't have ex officios, correct?
Right, we don't, but if we
So-
did, if the select board chose to put them in.
Oh, okay, so you want to have that, okay. Huh,
Yep.
good to have.
So, any questions or concerns at this point with those proposals and the 2 edits, the two sub-proposals that were modified? Is everything clear to everyone?
Tom, on number 10, which one did you use? Just sorry, I wasn't sure where we ended up there.
Yeah, welcome, Dan.
Attending was the choice?
Oh, no, actually, just striking that out because
Okay.
Because when I put that in later, Sue found the definitive word
Okay.
on this, which is that Secretary of State's wording. Were you listening in for the quorum section above that? I don't know when you signed in.
I was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
I heard before, yeah.
So just
Okay.
using that same clarifying wording of a quorum is a majority of total positions of voting members, regardless of vacancies or recusals.
Okay.
So it's for us, it's the same, a quorum has to be 4, and in order to pass something, it has to be 4. no matter anything else. So it seems kind of odd, but to me, but that's
Wait,
the state rule.
So if the quorum attending is 4, then it needs to be essentially a unanimous vote.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think I said that at a meeting before because Sue and I had talked about it, and that's what I was operating with. But I thought I personally think it's kind of weird. But since we're hemmed in by the Secretary of State's interpretation of the law, I guess so.
So that changes at some point.
It makes you feel any better. I mean,
No, it
it's
happens
not-
most of the time. Yeah. No,
I mean, but
remember-
it's also not, the planning commission, there are certain times that you take a vote, but it's
Right.
not like the DRB where you're voting every
Right.
meeting.
Yeah. And I think when I was early on in the commission, the first couple of years, I don't know if it always was the case, but people, at least the chair, kind of said, let's operate by consensus. And so that's maybe a goal or an ideal, but sometimes we can't get there. And just to move things along, take votes that end up being split. Okay. So do people like that plan of these proposals with those 2 changes to the proposals and removing the rules of procedure, Doc? That's my motion.
I guess that, well, I don't know what
Yeah.
Dan came in on. Did he come up, Dan, which one did you come in on? Number 12 or 8? While we were scrolling along.
It was when you were discussing the Secretary of State 4 quorum number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, then I will say, above in the document of that, the only thing that was changed right at this meeting was under duties of officers for chair. I struck out too much under number 3. I meant to just strike out including minutes.
Oh, okay.
So maybe if that jumped out as you as like, oh, why was that crossed out? I only meant to cross out the minutes because I've never seen that done and I don't think it's a legal requirement. So.
So Tom, if that's a motion, I second it. And
Okay.
thanks for putting those documents together. I think this is good.
Okay, great.
Oh, we vote already?
Yeah, let's vote.
Okay, so I vote yes.
Okay, Gary's in favor. Let's hands up if you're in favor. And Sarah and Dan. Okay, it's unanimous. Fantastic. So let's, we didn't skip the elections, Dan. We just did the bylaws and rules of procedure first. So let's do the elections now. So reviewing the bylaws, folks should know what these 3 roles of the chair and vice chair and clerk entail. I'd just like to throw out there that before we consider nominations, that maybe if someone vying to be clerk was enterprising and wanted to do things such as maintaining, compiling and maintaining and keeping updated a list of proposed land use reg amendments, not necessarily the housing ones because we have a consultant working on that. But that seems like a big, kind of database or list or spreadsheet that could have some curation.
So the duties would be that particular, then not, but also working alongside with Sue?
Oh, certainly, yeah, because in the bylaws
You have to
there,
really critique that.
right. I mean, staff certainly does a lot of clerical stuff for us, if not all of it. But, the clerk does have, as you see in our minutes, the power to do some of these things. I mean, the commissioners also just in general can do some of these things.
So they would have to meet with Sue, I guess, maybe have an
It'd be good to
office,
coordinate, yeah, certainly.
an office next to her.
Right. And then I've also found that, we say under Robert's Rules of Assembly, or for small assemblies, which is a modification of Robert's Rules, but then we also have modifications of the small assemblies rules. So we've got a kind of some complications there, and that can maybe not conflict, but maybe, that'd be under the clerk's purview to compile those things and simplify them and make them clearer. But those are just thoughts. Let's get on to considering nominations. We'll go down the order from chair to vice chair and clerk. And for each one, we will, take nominations, either self-nominated or people nominating others, and see what all the nominations are, and then do votes, and then move on to the next position. unless there's just one nominee for each, and then we can do it as a slate. So let's start with the chair. Are there any nominations for chairperson?
I can't see.
And I can't see the other commissioners on the screen.
Sorry. Hello. Is anyone there?
I stopped sharing screen.
It disappeared.
That's not what I'm looking at.
I guess it's just you and me, Tom.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
That's fine.
No,
We
why
need
that?
4 people.
Oh, we gotta.
Oh, wait, so does that mean we need 4 people to vote for one for the position?
It's
I don't know.
possible. I can just phone myself in.
I wasn't sure.
Can you phone yourself in?
I can see everyone now,
All right, there we go. Look at that.
That's weird.
Windows.
Okay.
That's awesome. Somebody's
Sorry about that.
missing.
That was a little weird.
too. Okay.
Alrighty.
So let's take nominations. Is everything all right?
Yeah, everything's okay.
Okay.
Just confused why that happened.
Let's take nominations for chairperson.
All right.
I nominate Tom.
Oh.
I second that nomination.
I looked it up. We don't have to second nominations. Thank you, though.
Absolutely.
And I don't think you have to accept nominations either. You just have to, if you don't want it, you can reject it, or whatever the word is. Any other nominations for chair? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much. Let's hold off on that vote and see how the others go, if they're just one nominee each. They don't have to be, though. How about vice chair? Any nominations?
I nominate myself.
Gary nominates himself. Okay. Any other nominations for vice chair?
Like, was my position as clerk.
Everyone relinquishes their position at the end because it's just 1-year terms.
Yeah, that's good.
No other nominations for vice chair? Okay. How about clerk?
I nominate Sarah for scribe,
Also known as clerk.
as clerk.
Very good. Sarah Lang for clerk.
I have to reject that.
Okay.
Sorry. I've got my hand in too many pies right now. So ask me in a year. Ask me in a year.
All right, welcome to the club.
Thanks,
What a
Gary.
feeling. Well, then I nominate.
Oh, hold on. I think we have to
Only
go
one
around one by one. Is anyone else have a chance for nominations for clerk? If not, I'll go to Gary.
I just wanted to clarify that prior to Tom's comments about some suggestions of things clerks could do, there really weren't any requirement. The clerk didn't have to do anything
Right.
because staff takes minutes, which is a good thing and should continue, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
just so if people are worried about the position, it hasn't
Yeah.
required any time.
Sure. Yeah, I was proposing those things as inspiration or motivation, not a
And it's fun.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm
You
not
got a
hearing.
weird view of fun.
Yeah.
I just sit back and enjoy the ride.
If there's not any nominations from people on Zoom, I'll hear from Gary. 'Cause he's the
I
second one.
nominate Dan Handy.
Okay, Dan Handy nominated for clerk.
Well, I'd have to follow up what Prudence was saying. So, as is the best example I can find is exactly today. I barely made it, late as I am. So, yeah, it certainly, as long as it's in name only, I suppose I'll accept it. But I appreciate the inspiration, Tom, to get more involved. And you know what? Maybe this winter or something, things will calm down a bit.
Okay, so I hear that as an acceptance of the nomination.
All right.
You can take a break, Gary, from being clerk.
That's
Good.
I worked really hard.
Just in time for summer, you can vacation.
The
Very good.
squire of the scribes.
Okay, so that's one nomination for each of the officer positions. And unless there's any others, interrupt me, but let's do, that's the motion. Tom Oskowski for chair, Gary Stroud for vice chair, and Dan Handy for clerk. Maybe I should ask for a second on that motion as a whole, voting for that
I
slate.
second Tom.
Gary seconds. Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand, please.
Raise your hand if you're sure.
Dan is not sure.
Was it unclear, Dan?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So-
You're getting that clerk.
I promise you,
Don't wanna
Dan,
bend
we've
your
had
arm,
many clerks and you will be
Okay.
fine.
You'll do.
Okay,
You
good.
have no added responsibilities.
I believe in you. Remember that.
But you can put it on your resume.
Yeah.
Hey, and it holds a lot of things. Your cookies, pizza.
All
Okay.
right.
Oh gosh, it's already 6:47.
Flying.
I don't think we're flying through it, Gary. Gosh, so we still have overview of open meeting law, review the just city values and equity priorities and commission webpage, and reviewing the town plan. Let's hit reviewing the open meeting law, and I think that's a good one for Sue to jump in with,
Sure.
do for us, as she's done in past years.
You need the gavel, Sue?
I do not. Can everybody see
No.
my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so
They can't, I don't think.
No open meeting.
Online.
can you guys see it on Zoom? Did I lose you on Zoom?
No, they can't.
I can't hear any of them.
Oh.
No,
Sorry,
we
this share screen is not working
So it's not
very
split screen
well.
like it usually does up on that.
Can't see anything. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
There
Sorry, it's being really weird today.
The TV's been flickering.
Okay. So what I did was take a couple of slides. Gosh.
It's going on there.
Okay. What I did was take a couple of slides that came out several years ago from the Vermont Land Use Education and Training Collaborative, just so you had something to look at. And they come from a slide deck conducting effective meetings and hearings, but it gets into open meeting law.
You need to press the key. It hasn't changed.
I don't understand why it's not working very well tonight. It's not advancing.
That was doing that last night too.
Was it?
That was really, I don't know if it's the TV itself, but yeah, it was issues I was having.
Zoom bar. Right here,
Which one?
right next to
The flat screen.
Sorry, it's not advancing. Let me,
Remote.
what's up?
If you could pass me the TV remote, I could see if that's what's going on.
Gosh. It's not advancing for anybody, so.
I mean, on there, we would have that issue too, so, yeah.
Let me stop sharing this screen.
This was a smart TV.
Can you open it in a different format, like PDF or?
Adobe.
I didn't save it as a
Adobe?
PDF. Wow. I could just talk to it. But I am. Everything is kind of.
So, what it's doing is the split screen, but it's not like actually doing the split screen.
It says more, what's that for, oh,
Just get it to mirror yours, it would be.
Usually that's a setting on the computer.
Okay. I should probably just go to the.
hey, there we go, screen sharing.
Yeah, but we want
maybe-
to share the screen though.
Oh, there it is, ta-da.
Oh.
No, they can't see it though.
Oh,
I'm going to try one more time, and then I'm going to just speak to it.
hey, you got like one of those big boards.
Okay. Can you see that now? All right. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it in this view because I don't know if doing it in the slideshow got a little complicated. So basically, there's meetings and there's hearings, and I'm going to talk about the difference between the two, and then talk a little bit about the open meeting law. So the three types of public assemblies are meetings, legislative hearings, and quasi-judicial hearings. So the Planning Commission is often acting in a legislative process, capacity. So we have regular meetings, we discuss our business, we make some decisions. And then there are times when the Planning Commission holds public hearings, and those are more legislative hearings. So if we're talking about changes to the town plan, or we're talking about changes to the land use regulations, those will have public hearings, so those are more legislative hearings. The Planning Commission doesn't act in a quasi-judicial hearing capacity. That is the Development Review Board, where they're taking evidence and they're using the land use regulations to make interpretations, and they're weighing people's rights. So that is a Development Review Board function. So I kind of just walked through that, so I'll just skip over it. So meetings are, a form of legislative event. And meetings are held when there's a quorum of the Planning Commission, when you convene to to discuss the business of the body or to take action. We talked about a quorum is four for this body, and this is the trigger for the open meeting law. And really, if we don't have a quorum at our meetings, we really shouldn't, we can't take any action. I prefer that we don't even meet, just because you can kind of get in a gray area there. So basic open meeting law requirements are that we must take minutes. The meeting must be publicly noticed. Meetings have to be open to the public, and the public must have an opportunity to comment. And to that last point, that's why on our agendas, we always have a public comment section. The public notice that we need to give for our meetings, regular meetings, basically we give notice. We actually don't do it at an organizational meeting. We do it in the beginning of the year. We set out the calendar of our meetings, which is the first Monday of the month at 6 p.m. So we kind of set out that schedule. We make it publicly available. We have it posted in the municipal center. And so that's our regular schedule. And then in advance of the meeting, that kind of satisfies the public notice. In advance of the meeting, we put out the agenda with more detailed information. We can hold special meetings. We're required to give a 24-hour notice. Obviously, if we can do more, that's better. And then emergency meetings, there's no notice required. I can't really think of a situation where the Planning Commission is acting in an emergency situation, but the open meeting law applies to all boards and committees, including the Select Board. There is one exception to the open meeting law, and again, this is not something that the Planning Commission, in my time here, has ever had to enter into, but I suppose that it could happen at some point, and that is executive session. And so, exceptions to open meeting law are discussions of personnel issues, contract discussions. It could be land acquisition or something like that. Again, rarely used by land use boards, but could be. And if you're going into an executive session, there is a way that you go into it and a way you come out of it, as you might be familiar from the Select Board meetings. I just want to hit on group emails because they are, it's a little gray area under the open meeting law. They can be used to schedule meetings, to create an agenda, or to distribute information for discussion at a meeting. But you really shouldn't be, you can't be having dialogue back and forth, because that can get into, discussing matters of the Planning Commission, and that would be a meeting. Yes, Gary?
So when you do that, you BCC or CCC everyone, so that way it's okay. I was just making sure I understood, because it was saying when you hit reply all, it's like you can't respond back because then it's considered all mail.
Right. So a good example is somebody might want to share a news article before a meeting, right? If you hit reply all and give your thoughts on that article, that's a no-no. If I've sent you an email that says, are you available on this date, or this date, please respond, and you hit reply all with, I'm available August 18th, that's not a violation of open meeting law because we're trying to set up a meeting. But my best advice to you is never hit reply all if the other planning commissioners are on it. You're better off just sending it to staff, and we will collect that information, and then we don't run a risk of violating the open meeting law.
Could the chair also, you're sending out the agenda as well, or?
Yeah.
The chair can send out the
So
agenda.
the last email I sent a few days ago with my edits to the bylaws and also saying where supporting docs were, that was mainly for Todd's, our new members' benefit. I felt like that falls under that third exception, which is distribute information for discussion at a meeting.
So if you ask, say for instance, is there anything that you want added, you can put that, that's not considered OML, you just, unless you express that in the email, is there anything else you want added to the agenda? Like if you're setting out the agenda, do anything omitted or added to it before it's warned? You can do that.
We could.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't, but if we wanted to have a whole commission group email where we strictly just keep it to those three things,
Yeah.
or if we start talking about the weather, that's not business of the
Right.
body, right? So that's a fourth exception, which is in the list. We could openly, talk about planning the agenda if we wanted by email.
And that would go directly to, in case we wanted to add something onto the agenda or?
Sure.
Okay.
And that's covered in our rules of procedure, though, about getting that either to Tom as chair or to staff, so that we're putting that together. I just wanted to also talk about collective editing of online documents. We do use a shared Google Drive to distribute documents, and it is available to the public. But we are not editing in there. We just use it to disseminate the information. So the Secretary of State recommends against doing a collective editing of documents outside of a duly warned public meeting, unless it's deliberative session. So that's not us. So I wanted to include that just to be accurate, but Planning Commission doesn't enter deliberative session. And the reason that it's advised against is that you can get into an exchange of ideas or opinions if you're group editing a document, and it's taking place outside of the public view. So, again, if something is sent out and you want to, send some edits, you can send them to staff, and we will compile it for discussion at the meeting.
Now, certain documents are sensitive too. Like when I was on the CPCC, certain documents that were sent to us, was that the same applies to planning and DRB as well? Also, certain documentations that have on there have to be looked at as anything else as privy?
So I wouldn't say, I can't think of any documents that the Planning Commission ever discusses that is privileged information. I think if the Development Review Board is in deliberations, and one thing, an exception to sharing documents, can be for the quasi-judicial, right? So if you're kind of coming to agreement on the findings of fact, that can be happening in the deliberative session,
Or executive.
and therefore it's not executive. It's different. It's deliberative session, and that. Then there could be some group editing. Brian will go over that at the DRB meeting, but so until that decision is finalized, the DRB would be in deliberative session, and that kind of group editing can happen. I don't think that's the way the DRB does it, but
Right, no, I've never.
it seems to be that could be allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we'll continue to use the Google Drive, but no group editing.
That's only staff.
Tom is able to put information in.
Okay. You could ask.
He can upload.
To it. Okay, absolutely.
Yeah, he can upload. And then I just wanted to talk about Act 178. Sarah brought up earlier, about hybrid meetings or meeting remotely. So currently, Act 178 is in effect. It expires January 15th, 2023, and it's the temporary law that suspends certain provisions of the open meeting law. Basically, it allows a quorum to meet remotely without a physical location for the public to attend. So, when there were lockdowns or stay-at-home orders, the Planning Commission was able to meet. The public could join online. And also Act 178 allows electronic posting of agendas and special meeting notices. So, one of our posting places that open meeting law requires a physical posting in 3 locations staff takes care of that. But, when the municipal center was shut, nobody was seeing those notices. So there was this provision where you could post it online, you could send it to the media. So, this is in effect till January 15, 2023. We're currently operating hybrid meetings where some commissioners are home and some are here. The public can participate on Zoom or come here. I just need to research a little bit come January, do we have to have a quorum of planning commissioners present? We can always have the option of allowing the public to participate remotely. Gary.
So I guess it was a meeting way back that was brought up too. I don't know if it was with Peter or when we were doing town meeting, that was something for people who cannot get out to these meetings, which is good because then you're bringing on more people to publicly chime in. And even though this was in place because of COVID, I think people mentioned too, it's good to have for people who cannot, don't have transportation, can't get out. If Act 178, can we decide and determine to continue with hybrid? Is that something that has to be enacted by select board or?
My understanding is we can continue to have hybrid meetings where the public can Zoom in. What I need to find out is if we have to have, if planning commissioners can still Zoom in. I would like to see that because I think that also increases participation. Maybe it makes it possible for some of you to be able to serve, to volunteer.
Yeah.
But I need to double check that,
Clarify that
with the Secretary of State.
And I heard in a couple of my other committees, they wanted to also to bring more people of interest, joining committees to get some type of hybrid going for them too, because a lot of committees you don't. If it's just way of code, you don't need a hybrid. But if it's another committee like the Arts Committee, like they talked about last night, to get more people interested, that was just a thought also. But yeah.
Okay.
So this is all I had for an overview. I'm happy to take questions. Staff is definitely, meeting the posting. We try our best on the minutes to be up within 5 days. If the physical minutes aren't up, then the BCTV transcript is up. So, we do our best with the physical minutes.
Okay. Keeping in mind we're a bit behind here, but is there anything from commissioners about the open meeting law? Yeah, Dan.
Just a quick question about subcommittees, especially when grant proposals are being reviewed and so forth. I'm not sure if this really applies. We're not editing documents, but we're taking significant amounts of time outside of meetings to review information. And I'm just curious if that's been an issue as far as discussing those. I don't think I've been privy to any of it, but if you just recently got a document, let's say the meeting is in a day or two, is there anything in the electronic creation of documents that also applies to review of documents, or is that just for editing?
Just for editing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, you're taking notes on paper. It could be useful to, if you're not editing the document, if you're just taking notes and sharing them. I don't think we've done that, but I'm not saying we have to do that, but it could be really productive. Just saying.
So what we've tried to do, if we're reviewing proposals, oftentimes I will collect everybody's thoughts and then put them in one document and put it out. So again, using staff as the person to kind of collate all the comments that we might get. And then the other thing I'd say is, when we're reviewing proposals, we don't have a quorum meeting to do that. So, it's why we get only a couple of volunteers to kind of help staff so that we don't have a meeting of the Planning Commission.
Mm-hmm.
But when we had a subcommittee for solar siting, we did warn all those meetings. and do minutes.
Yes. I remember.
Not that we necessarily had to legally, but it's just good open practice to do so.
Good form.
Exactly. Okay.
So generally, subcommittees don't necessarily fall under that unless you're volunteering to make it an open process. Is that the idea?
I think if you've got a quorum of a planning, if there's a subcommittee, if solar siting had 4 planning commissioners on it, then it's definitely would have to be warned as a planning commission. We just try to warn everything, if it's volunteers, in that situation, because they weren't making any decisions, but they were making recommendations, and the public might want to know.
So that's similar to the RFPs or surveys that we do? No?
No.
Okay.
Okay, anything else with the open meeting law or Sue's presentation of it? Okay, hopefully we can hit these next 2 quickly. This one I wanted to put on here. It's related to this thing called the Just City values and the Planning Commission's equity priorities. And both of those are kind of featured right on the Planning Commission's webpage, which Sue is going to. Hopefully you all will be able to see that. If not, you can find our webpage on your own. I don't want to take up too much time, but if you read these, they're pretty self-explanatory. And I guess, on one hand, here these are to review for anyone to ask questions about or propose anything. So before saying my kind of intent or motive or something, I'll just say that when these were put on, I think the only other commissioner besides myself present was Prudence, and certainly Sue, was there as well, not as a commissioner, but as staff. So we know kind of the background and our kind of work and thought process when those went on. So any thoughts or questions?
Well, I guess if anything, we could shoot it to you and Sue. I mean, I'm probably sure I can brainstorm a few more things to bring it up to.
Yeah,
rather than take up time.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds good. Yeah, if they're just being short on time, if they're just kind of curiosity questions or informative, they can be asked outside the meeting.
It may be
Dan.
just a quick question. Since you have history of it, was there a problem that you were trying to address, or was it just an initiative that you thought, hey, these the design for the justcity.org, put this out and we'd like to use it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's part to it, but if you could give us a little bit of
I'll offer a quick answer, and if Prudence or Sue want to offer more, feel free. I think we had a different chairperson, and that chair, I think, introduced and spearheaded this. That's not to say that anyone else was resistant to it. I think everyone else was supportive of the process. And I think it was like 2 years-ish ago, and there was a lot of talk nationwide about our sort of perceived decline of how we treat each other in fairness and equity. And so there was a lot of push in whatever sort of job or roles people had to enshrine some basic standards and values. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. I think that's pretty accurate. It was after George Floyd's murder, and it was a recognition that planning has a long history of creating inequalities and being racist, and so it was just some work to kind of recognize that and figure out values that we thought were important in the Planning Commission's work.
This was before or after George Floyd?
It was after.
Soon after.
Nice flag, though.
So I'll just add in that I don't disagree with any of this, but I feel like we haven't talked about it at all in 2 years, and so it kind of makes me wonder why it's still on the webpage. And Sue and I have control of the webpage, so that's kind of that's a weird question to ask. It's on there because we've left it on. And but I just want to know if commissioners feel like, you know, both those sections, the just city values and equity, should stay on there.
I think it should. Reason being because it brings in that diverse crowd. It opens up doors for other people who could find interest in saying, hey, there is some inclusiveness there. Whereas, you know, you don't think this is just a, not say a society, but its own little organization, you know what I mean, set aside just for this particular thing. But here's an open door where people can come in and express and be a part of this from any background. And I think that shows, I'm proud you guys did that. So I think leaving that there, and I might add a few more, you know, take away a few more just to bring it up to where we're at now in these times. Lets people know that, hey, you know, this is a committee that anybody can be a part of in this town, new and old.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, we can just consider our once-a-year review of something to be our continuing, you know, support or endorsement of it. So it's not like we need to talk about it at every meeting necessarily. But I want to hear from well, Kurt, we'll get you after any other commissioners want to say. Just, I don't know if this is an official vote or anything, but, you know, leave it ambiguous, remove it. What do you think? Prudence?
I'd like to leave it, and I think that we should refer to it when there are decisions, when we're making decisions that that it's relevant for. You know, like it's not probably relevant to the procedural, you know, document that we just approved, but it could be relevant for other things. So I think it's important to have it, and we probably ought to try to reflect back on it in some of our discussions.
Okay, great. Sarah or Dan, do you want to say anything? This isn't necessarily an official vote. I'm hearing this from Gary and Prudence. I'm up for leaving it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
To everything they said, spot on.
Okay, great.
I'm all for leaving it also. I guess my curiosity is piqued that I'm thinking that image that's on the website was culled from the design for the Just City website. Is that the idea? Yeah.
Yep.
Makes sense. So what Gary was just referring to, that we could add to this or edit, that's our document, that little colorful.
Yes.
That's ours. Okay. Great.
Okay. Let's hear from the public. Kurt, what do you think?
Hey, I'm the public. I've been thinking a lot about this lately. My organization is studying it. We have a study group on a very closely related issue about how how public discourse is failing, especially in the climate issue. So I've got a lot of things spinning around in my head, and I think you shouldn't include it. I think people have lost sight of the fact that Brattleboro is a very open place in some respects. And if there is a marginalized community here, it's not gays or lesbians or transvestites or transsexuals. It's Republicans. Republicans are marginalized here. It'd be easier to get on a committee as a transsexual than as a conservative Republican. So in effect, our diversity attitude is, eating its own tail, and trans issues are getting too much attention, I think. Just take a look at this little picture here. Equity, equality, and diversity. They're the same thing. I mean, you could reword those little yellow words over and over again, but they won't be able to distinguish one from the other. It just shows how over careful we are in that respect. So I think you're just wasting your time if you invest any more in tweaking these things or coming up with a policy. I'd also add, from my very regrettable observations, I think that what am I trying to say here? that there is more acrimony coming from my allies, that is, people on the left, liberals, progressives, than there is from the people that I know and am friendly with on the right. And I think you might keep that in mind. At least keep in mind that it's the one person, at least one person in town thinks so. And it might lead you to some other thought that's more palatable, more acceptable. But I really see a lot of hate on the left.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Well, hearing that public comment, if anyone wants to espouse something differently, maybe in preparation for next meeting or something,
Well, I
feel
think
free.
we could expound on, like I said, during these times now, we're going through a lot, and you're dealing with a lot of different issues.
But Gary, do you have a plan for?
Well,
do you
my
want to do
plan is
something
that at
different
some
with
point
these?
we'll probably have, like you said, we can send things your way to add or subtract, and people can send their own interpretation, what they see out there for themselves, and that can be, I guess, looked at by staff or by us, and then we could determine them, because right now you're not going to resolve this issue.
No, we're not. Yeah, and for these two categories, these are very much statements that are saying,
Yeah.
like, us commission, we all hold these truths together. So those aren't things that I'm going to edit as a
Yeah,
chair. But
well-
everything else in the webpage, I have asked Sue to change. But they're kind of more just factual, objective things.
Yeah.
And I feel comfortable doing that, but not these on my own. So
Yeah, I'm going to have to look at it
if
again.
if people have additional thoughts, then we'll bring that up at future meetings, or bring it up in advance so it can be on an agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's nothing else on that, let's do the review of the town plan. I noticed in the town plan it says that it should be reviewed every year, but we can keep it very brief, I think. You all saw Steve's memo and compilation of. He mainly focused on, I think we don't need a presentation from you, Steve, because we're late on time and the memo was good, and I think everyone reviewed that, hopefully. But we can get it up on the screen. And because we're talking about housing so much, he focused largely on that, but that's not to say that we don't have to bring up any important comments or about the town plan as a whole right now if we want.
Yeah. Tom,
Sure.
for the 10-second.
Oh, sure.
So,
Yep.
I'm mostly framed this is where our town plan contains language that might cause difficulty for the implementation of our bylaw modernization grant, which is aimed at rewriting parts of our zoning bylaw, land use ordinance, in order to allow for more housing production, as well as places where it is in concert with what we are sharing as our current values in that direction. So places where it might conflict and places where it does seem to be dovetailing still well. So
Okay.
I suppose if we do have any time, if folks want to ask any pointed questions about it, I'd be happy to answer them.
Sure. Yeah, 7:20 already, but if we can just keep it to 10 minutes to 7:30, if people have, I certainly do have a few, couple observations and a couple inject my own kind of unofficial vote of path forward comments as well. But let's go around to anyone else with anything, questions or points of most enthusiasm or focus or whatever else.
Good. Unless you want to know your questions today.
Oh, Prudence.
Sorry.
So I like that most enthusiasm because I felt enthusiasm for the comment on page 136 about under support for rural landscape, changing the 3-acre minimum seems like it would be a priority given what we've learned about rural sprawl and so on.
I agree. I marked that one down as worthwhile, especially worthwhile to work on. And then while we're on that page, and certainly anyone else can jump in after me, but page 132 with the smart growth, how our town plan, says to prioritize directing most growth to infill sites over, so-called greenfield sites. I just hope we can keep that in mind as we, do this neighborhood development area expansion. I'm just worried that maybe it's going to be, large and into forested areas that aren't watered and sewered. But if it does end up just the Winston Prouty expansion, for example, if it is just a little bump up from the downtown one into the Winston Prouty campus that is currently built up and watered and sewered, I'm in favor of that, but not, larger into the forested area and undeveloped area. So, and that's also what neighborhood development areas are supposed to be for. So I would assume that the State Department wouldn't grant that, but maybe they will. I don't know. So yeah, I'd just like to hold, the smart growth concept as important. Any other comments or observations with this? I have a couple more, but maybe we can alternate. I was curious about the page 93 developer impact agreements. Is that something that our current land use regs require in certain cases?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? Is
Yeah,
that
93, right there.
Yeah.
Developer impact agreement. So that's
So-
not primarily happening through the planning department or commission, but
It's happening in other parts.
Well,
Oh.
part of it is because we're not seeing large development. So development, this is the development agreements, right? They are typically put in place for a large subdivision where there's, roads and, other utility infrastructures. And, at what point will the town take over the road? So they're just agreements that kind of give this town some assurance and kind of the developer, kind of the roadmap forward. So they're not really adding potential costs. They're designed to help protect the town.
Right.
They haven't always done that, though. There could be other ways to help protect the town.
I just
such
wondered
as escrowing.
if that was some, I hadn't come across it, but I see what you mean now, if it's major developments, which we haven't been seeing, so.
I suppose I should reiterate, as this was sort of conceptually similar to the memo that we had discussed previously, and then once again in the joint meeting, that and that one being focused on potential regulations within our zoning code that may theoretically add costs to the production of housing. That these were just sort of any theoretical conflict or opportunity that I saw, and so it's not a value judgment of whether or not we should feel a certain way about those. It's just flagging areas where we might want to think about, is this in concert or is this in conflict with our goals at the present?
Yeah, understood, certainly, for me at least. Yeah, and I hope, we keep track of this document when the town plan comes up in a few years or several. For example, page 141, in the town plan, like you wrote, Steve, has binding language. Maybe we shouldn't say that too loudly because our land use regs conflict with it. But on page 141, it says in the residential neighborhood, or this references it, that no retail shall be permitted, but we actually do permit it in a couple ways, or in kind of like a caveat way. Yeah, the second to last one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the town plan explicitly says no retail shall be permitted, but our land use regs allow shops on South Main Street, on Western Ave.
That's right.
Just little shops.
Just little shops.
They need to fit certain strict standard, but.
I should also clarify that it's my understanding that the word shall has been found in state case law to be binding in that sense in a town plan, but I would be happy to review statute or case law to confirm that if that's up in the air.
It's binding in Act 250, or they have found it to be binding in Act 250.
But it may not be
Those-
binding as far as the land use regs need to be perfectly aligned with your town plan.
Still a potential
Yeah.
quagmire there
Yeah.
with regard to Act 250.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Do we have that, if that, I don't know, do we have information, I was trying to find that information on Act 250. Do we have that? Is there any way we could look it up? Is it separate?
It's a state level thing, but you can find.
You're looking
okay.
for background information on Act
Right,
250?
just to research, look into that a little bit more. Yeah, on the DRB report.
Yeah, maybe a
work
training or
small
something,
reviews
yeah.
of
One-on-one, yeah, because
different-
that's something I was gonna mention also. I don't know if that's in the purview of, didn't we have that before, an educational? At one time, I think, was during COVID or after, post-COVID. On the new land regs, we had that one day. I think people came into understanding better how the new regs were. I don't know if that's something, or the cannabis regs.
What, you're saying you want the same for Act 250 or?
Yeah, I was looking to see if that's something, I mean,
If the planning commission has training needs, we can certainly discuss that and figure out how we can train. If it's DRB, I'll let the DRB have those
Right.
discussions and not.
and for new people that are coming aboard too, or that, and it's good to be educated, and even like from Mike saying with the DRB perspective also. So when we do approve or disapprove things, knowing the reasons for that. So yeah, I think an educational maybe meeting one day we could have.
Yeah, we do have an opportunity to weigh in on Act 250 proceedings, right? As like an interested party, but there's nothing really formal.
The town can formally weigh in.
The town can, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That could be good maybe to review our powers with that.
That meant we have educational class on that too, knowing our,
Mm-hmm.
what we're limited and not, limited. I think that being said, like I said, new people coming, it's a good educational piece for people even to chime in to see also, hey, I want to, now that I understand how that works, I'd like to get involved in some of those committees. So that's just a thought. I don't know if that's something you want to consider down the road.
Yeah, I do. I think people should know about Act 250 for sure. Yes, Steve, I think you highlighted a lot of important, interesting points here. And like you said, not value judgments, but just points of hang-ups or conflicts or opportunities. So.
Dan has his hand.
Oh yeah, Dan, couldn't see you.
No worries. Yeah, I appreciate the diplomacy that you're displaying, Steve and Susan. Sue, excuse me.
It's okay. It is my name.
I have there's so many Sues and Susans, but anyway, but Steve, there's a lot of background to things like number 57, if you want to scroll back to that one. As far as, a lot of these are connected, but, there really should be some revisiting of some of the historic preservation designations, and I don't know how we would do that, but I think 57 just jumps out at me. If you want to comment about it, as far as what makes sense as historic preservation goals, and for preservation of understandably historic sites, and the tension that I think 57 points out is that there are some market issues with the value of these properties essentially, and preventing new housing being developed. There's such a long and sordid history of this, but I really am curious, looking at it with relatively fresh eyes, what can we functionally, even make a statement about, as far as the conundrum, the dilemma that we're really facing. Does that make sense? That's a question for you, Steve. I'll let you can riff on that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll try to limit myself for time. But certainly it seemed to me that there was more so in the town plan than in our active regulations. A conflict, at least in the stated values, of wanting to sort of upgrade and update housing to meet what the presumed needs of the market of the day were versus the goal that was also stated in further chapters for historic preservation to, well, preserve the history as it is. And certainly those aren't absolutes either. But I think it is kind of an unresolved conflict, at least in the stated values, in terms of, I know that there has been expressed interest in potentially designating additional historic districts in town that would give design review and some level of regulatory protection to other parts of town, as we've got downtown and in the Horton Homestead and Clark Canal areas and in the village. But I think they don't necessarily have to be in conflict, but it's worth considering that with our land market the way that it is, I don't know that a scrape off redevelopment pencils out pretty much at all at the moment anyhow. I know we've certainly heard quotes of $400 plus per square foot in construction these days. So I think, allowing for the demolition of lowercase h historic properties is probably not the best course of action necessarily for preserving housing and I guess lowercase p preservation, so to speak, in that preserving existing dwelling units that are in the ground now is one way to maintain the number that we've got in town. And certainly in eras in the past, large-scale demolition of housing, say in urban renewal per se, was never replaced with the same number or greater number of units. So the most sustainable building is the one that you've got right now, is certainly something that a lot of people will claim as a mantra. So we might want to have a conversation about this at a future meeting. Or
I just want to jump in here as the author of that chapter back in the day. And Steve and I didn't get a chance to talk about this document because his work is really solid. So when talking about housing obsolescence, it had nothing to do with scrape-offs. It had to do with, knob and tube wiring that then people cannot get mortgages for. They can't get it financed through certain home buying things. So it really wasn't about scraping off any older properties. It was bringing them up to contemporary, standard so that young people could get them, or anybody could get them financed. It's just, and the housing study did confirm that is an issue.
I suppose in that sense, then the reader response criticism, so to speak.
Yeah, that's fair.
It didn't occur to me that that's what was necessarily being discussed. It sounded like it was more like people don't want our shabby housing anymore, so we should do something to make it more attractive. If we wanted to consider, I guess, adding a bit of descriptive information to say, like, we mean these specific common fixtures that can preclude people from contemporary finance products, I think that wasn't something that I was even aware of. So I think that would definitely be a productive addition to put in there.
Okay, you guys forwarded the land use regs compilation that you made to Brandy of PlaySense. Not necessarily as, well, that had our priorities layered over it, right? Because commissioners kind of commented with our priorities, whereas we haven't so much with this one, except for the 3-acre part. And obviously she's not going to be changing the town plan.
And I have to say, the town plan, amending it, is quite a process.
Right, no, and I'm not proposing that either,
okay.
but, and she's aware of the town plan, so maybe there's no need to forward this particular document to her.
For clarity, and maybe I'm the only one who's unclear about this, it's possible I'm still the newest to the state of everybody on today. Even if we're updating simply for corrections for factual information, is that any substantive change, even solely for changing, say, rescue 911 to the town, would require the same adoption process?
I think it might be an easier adoption process, but there's still an adoption process, and it doesn't set the clock
Okay.
over.
I will
Yeah.
educate myself on that.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay, obviously we could take a whole 2-hour meeting to do the organizational meeting, and maybe that's the way it was originally intended, but I was hoping not to, take 1/12 of our regular meeting time for business and to fit in a couple other things. So moving on from the organizational meeting, we have considering some changes to the rural business zoning district, and that can be the ones that I proposed, as well as anything else that people bring up. And just to be clear, we're not changing the zoning now, right? We're kind of making if we may come to a sort of semi-formal agreement, but then that will be lumped in with our future actual official public hearing where we, that does that initiates the land use regs changes, and we're going to do that after the housing project, the bylaw modernization project. So we'll just lump everything in together. And then we also have the reviewing the joint DRB, DRC, PC meeting and those other committee members' feedback and some from staff and commissioners. It'd be nice to get to both. I don't have high hopes, but since we put off the rural business zoning district consideration of changes from last meeting, let's hit that one first. I put together that document. I didn't really have major changes that I wanted to propose. It was just kind of, I had one that kind of spearheaded my looking at the rural business district, and then I noticed another thing or two while having some focus on it. And that was that bars/drinking places are not allowed in the rural business district. So as you'll see in this, you guys can see in the land use regs document the zoning map, but just in case it's not memorized, the rural business district is essentially a strip of Route 9 after West Brattleboro Village. Oh yeah, I put it in here too.
I see the map.
I forgot everything I put in here. Yeah, so it's that brown area there. As you can see, there's a couple, 2 or 3 dense-ish neighborhoods right bordering it, and there are some houses in the rural business district. It's watered and sewered, and there's a lot of traffic. So similar districts, like in my mind, like the service center and the neighborhood center, they either allow bar/drinking place as permitted or conditional. There's a path forward to that happening. And then it's also allowed, in the village center and downtown and mixed use. And so it really seemed to me that, it's maybe an opportunity and for that sort of establishment to be there. And, maybe it's kind of also an issue of fairness. There's populations there, and they, need to get in their car and drive to downtown or, West Brattleboro Village, a mile or, 2 miles away in order to have that kind of social or whatever opportunity. So that was one proposed change I had. And the other was that the 24-foot minimum seemed, maybe that was an aspiration for kind of denser mixed use with multiple floors, but, I don't necessarily see that happening anytime soon. And the current assembly of buildings there, a lot of them are just single story and appear to be much under, clearly under 24 feet. So I thought that should be struck as well, that minimum. Because there are some other districts where there is no minimum. What do people think of those? Or just, this overall, topic in general of, adjusting the rural business district in some ways?
So that brown spot where you have, that's West B?
Yep. It's, Leader Home Center is in there, Chelsea Royal Diner, Mama Says.
You have that, there's another, a steakhouse, if I'm not mistaken, out there.
There may be the American House or something. That's my fault.
I forgot.
The New England House.
The
The
New
New
England
England
House.
House that serves too.
Yeah, Gary,
alcohol.
the salmon-colored piece that's surrounded by yellow
Yeah.
is the village center. And so then a little bit further up on Route 9, like where you've got Discount Beverage and
Yes.
Mama Says, and
Yeah.
that whole area that's between, the piece of yellow you can see to the north is Tri Park, and
Right.
below is
Westwood?
Westgate.
Westgate.
Westgate
And,
and what's the
Yes.
name of that neighborhood? Sherwood Circle.
Right.
Yeah, so there's like a couple thousand people right around there.
That
bordering
being said, I'm trying to think because I think the New England House does serve.
It's a restaurant. It
It's
does serve, but it's
okay,
it's
but not
considered a
bar
restaurant. It's not a
itself,
bar.
Like what are those new microbreweries? Wasn't there one? I don't know if there was one proposed, but
You know, the collective
Like the
bar is a bar
Collective.
downtown. The marketplace may be considered one.
yeah, you're right. There isn't any bars out there because wasn't that a flood.
It is pretty flood constrained out there. A lot of the parcels are, but there's some land that's out. And commercial uses can be built in the special flood hazard area, not the floodway, but they have to be elevated outside of the flood hazard.
Yeah, because you're right. There's really nothing there. I don't think there was it might have been a bar a long time ago, but it's gone. But yeah, it's
Right.
really.
Okay, Steve, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I wanted to just, if we've got a second, loop in. There were two major problems with the zoning here in regards to being flexible for any potential housing projects that came up when a member of the public asked me questions about a project that he wanted to potentially pursue there. It was 3, but you've covered the height minimum. But so it occurred in our conversation that what he wanted to do was virtually identical to the cottage cluster PUD that we do have on the books. But we don't permit the cottage cluster, or to my understanding, any of the PUDs from being pursued in this specific district. And so that is potentially an issue. But more substantially, the 1.5 acre minimum lot size seems like a major barrier, and just not in any way in congruence with what the pattern is in that area.
Sure. Yeah. What is it for service center and neighborhood center, for example?
Oh well, you have what is it? Well, was it Dollar General out there? That's a place you could probably.
I actually didn't bring my land use regulations. I
I'll
can
pull
pull
it
it up
up.
quickly. What I would say is this is flood constrained land. This was not an area where we were actually looking to have a lot of, new residential.
Sure. Yeah, there are some parcels that have plateaus. I think it's something we've
Yep.
come to really understand later.
Yep.
And so I can understand why that wasn't the original intent, but in doing so, some land that is potentially good for infill housing, greenfield housing, that does have utility access was accidentally sort of prevented from
Sure.
pursuing that.
Yeah, that might be, so maybe looking at the boundaries. And then the only other thing I would say about the minimum lot size is we were trying to go with this kind of transect idea so that we didn't have just this, village pattern just extending along Route 9. So, I think that we'd want to take an in-depth look if we're looking at changing the minimum lot sizes.
Sure.
BHP, they have that area I think they were doing some work down in their Brattleboro housing part. When you go from I guess it's where 7-Eleven is at, they have down there's like a place prior before you go down, and there's some housing units down there.
Oh, Melrose Terrace?
That's the one.
That is actually just outside the village center. That's in the residential neighborhood, and that was damaged in Irene.
Yeah, I seen them
And
do
it was
work.
senior housing, so, a vulnerable population in a vulnerable area. So that's why they pursued the Red Clover Commons over on Canal
okay,
Street
that's the one
to
okay,
remove people
got
from
it.
the floodplain.
Well, personally, that makes sense to me to not, hold the rural business district to the same sort of density expectations as the service center, neighborhood center. But what do folks think about the, the building height minimum and the bar drinking place?
Well,
Dan?
Question, do we have any history as to when the no bar drinking place rule went into effect? Or the 24-foot?
So the 24-foot height, probably, both of them came in with these land use regulations, so those were 2015. I don't recall off the top of my head whether I don't think the 24-foot height was in place prior to that. I don't know about the bar. I'd have to research, or did
I'd
you
be
do
happy
that?
to, well, no, but I know where we've got the copies of
Yeah.
no longer in effect land use codes. So I'd be happy to do a quick historical dig for you guys to see if any comparable zoning districts that we had in the past might have allowed for something like that.
And the thought behind the height was really trying to encourage mixed use. So, offices or retail on the first floor with some housing above, feeling that, would be a good way, just trying to encourage more mixed use. There was some work done in, like 2008, there was a West Brattleboro master plan that talked about preserving some of the views that you could see from Route 9. So, the foreground, not sure I'm using the right word. So there was some work done there about wanting to protect the, views that you would see in a little, off the backs of those parcels.
That was- Sorry,
Dan?
that was 2008, you said?
I think it was 2008, could have been 2006.
That's interesting. Pre-Irene, so
It was.
Yeah, 2011. So that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, they did a lot of work on visual preference, which is where some of the design guidelines for that district came from.
Interesting.
Kurt's got a hand raised.
Any other commissioners want to share thoughts right now before we go to Kurt? Yeah, I saw Sarah's hand.
Yeah, I think I like this proposal. I think that water and sewer is just limited in general, and so being able to capitalize on any of the locations that has that in not to say that all of a sudden we're going to have a ton more bars, but having the option there I think is good.
Yep. Well, yeah, so if we, I'm trying to unfortunately kind of rush things along, but, just to, and we'll hear from Gary, but the way I've seen us do amendments before is like, I think what could be started with this as well, where we just kind of have a kind of, not binding vote, but we have a vote to kind of gauge our feelings on this. And that doesn't mean that the land use regs are going to change in the way we voted, but it means that staff is going to prepare something, in line with that vote at an actual, when we begin the land use reg process, which may be next March, let's say.
Hopefully sooner, but yes.
Yeah, or next January, next February. So, so I just want to, if people have questions or things they, to say for persuasion to sway the vote or to see how they want to vote, I want to hear it, but also I'd like us to just make a a non-binding decision. But also Kurt's hands up, but did you want to say something?
No, it was here from Mr.
Okay,
Dimes.
yeah, Kurt.
I forget exactly how it was relevant, but it seemed relevant a while ago. I thought it mentioned that it's 10% of Brattleboro's population that lives in floodplains as designated by the U.S. Geological Survey.
Huh.
I'm not just pulling that out of my butt. That's because BCS has a grant helping those people figure out their relations to the government with respect to flood relief and so forth.
Sure.
Yes, it's a lot of people that live close to the water.
Right. Well, and so this is not to say that if we allow bars that they're all going to be filled by flood water in some future hurricane. There are areas of the rural business district that are outside of that. And there are ways to build inside that are elevated, right? And, and if you see the permitted and conditional table, I mean, there's 80 other uses, let's just say. So it's not like, if we allow this, even though we have, worthwhilely been talking about flooding in that zone, it's not related, too much in my mind. But so I heard Sarah, and you guys know how I feel, but what about, do we just want to do a vote? Someone can make a motion, or people can, yep, Prudence? Oh, unmute yourself, Prudence. Unmute yourself.
It took a while for the icon to come up. So I just wonder why it was excluded in the first place. It seems funny. But anyway, this area has got one of the highest concentrations of low income Vermonters of, probably maybe anywhere in the state. And I'm not sure how that relates to this discussion, but I just wanted to make that comment.
Yep.
I'm really glad that we're going to have crosswalks put in there and bike lanes. That's going to happen next year, and that's really important. It's a very dangerous place to cross a road, and there's, a lot of people live there, and they need to get to stuff across from where they are. But that's not too relevant to the question of a bar, really.
Okay. Yep, Dan.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe take it might be unnecessary, but sort of a principle on this. I'd like some explanation as to why we wouldn't rename this district Rural Business District, if you're considering, especially what Prudence was saying, but everything else we've been talking about. It sort of rings. It has a weird ring to it. And I'm curious why it was named that in the first place, but I mean, I understand what it is, but it's not Putney Road, around, it's not, obviously not that, but
how about
I can give you a little context.
how about rural service?
Yeah,
So it was originally called the Suburban Commercial District.
Suburban
Yeah,
commercial.
that's what it was before this. And the work from the West Brattleboro Master Plan really identified that people resonated with buildings like the American Traders building, which is now the Hempicurian, and New England House, and even the hardware store out there, that kind of vernacular feeling. So I think that's how the name rural business came up. It might be worth, before we, make too many changes or agree on changes to the height, to kind of revisit the West Brattleboro Master Plan and kind of what came out of that. Or it's just like Tom had said, it's kind of a consent to kind of move forward at this point, but it's not a permanent change.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that almost every meeting until December, through December, is going to have half of it be the bylaw modernization with housing, and then we have other kind of things that come up. So it's going to be hard to I've got a whole list of potential zoning changes that aren't housing related, and it's going to be hard to get more than several of them in, and in addition to whatever ideas other people have. So I certainly love the idea of, reviewing the West Brattleboro plan and doing, a well-educated and time, but if we do, we won't have much in this next zoning amendment process than just housing, which could be fine, but.
So should we revisit it, go look at it, come back and come to a consensus that we all can agree for a new name for it?
I mean, does someone have an idea right now? I mean, we can move forward with these two or three rural business things now, but certainly we can talk about rural business more at a future meeting if there's time.
I mean, I'd like to see your ideas and thoughts that you have on paper.
I see Dan's hand up because.
Well, I gotta say, it would bookend with the idea of urban center, which I would simply call central business district. CBD is pretty straightforward. Actually, I can see why they would have named it Suburban, just for what it's worth. And relative to urban center, you have a suburban. But I don't think there are other ways to go with it. But I just don't think rural business district really fits either. So it's worth a discussion. I don't know if you're also going to talk about bars and walkability, sort of pedestrian traffic, and whatever they were talking about in 2008. Maybe we could revisit some of those questions.
Well, what if they're putting newer things? I mean, if they're gonna put newer things in there too, and we're talking even microbrew, who knows with the new bridge what's gonna be created?
I mean, yeah, no question. It should be, a bikeable, walkable area, but much like a suburb, really, I honestly be like a suburb kind of feel if it were a walkable suburb.
That's true.
Can we take a vote on these two? I mean, since we didn't coalesce around a proposal or a suggestion for the name there, the bar and the minimum height changed proposals. Let's just vote on that. And remember, that's our official decisions on that will come later. Yep, Steve.
I just wanted to ask if you had an interest in gauging the group's willingness to provide consent or lack thereof towards directing staff to look into the acre lot size minimum or acre and a half lot size minimum and PUD options as well.
I don't want to get into PUDs. That is going to be a part of the bylaw modernization.
Yeah, right. I mean, the PUD is a separate
I think that's
section of the regs.
Yeah, I don't think that's worth staff time because it's going to be dealt with bylaw and it's going to be cleaned up and
Do you want to move to?
I mean, personally, that sounds good to me. 1.5 acres on one hand seems a little large, but I don't know what the what sits well with me for smaller. But I'm for you guys looking into it and bringing something forward.
Can we?
So how about these three things? Yep, Dan.
Well, yeah, just I think I caught it. Just to consider, I think Sue, you said that prior to the current name, it was the Suburban Commercial District. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually like the idea of commercial being in there rather than simply business. I mean, I don't know. It's semantics at some level, but it's commerce. It's a thoroughfare also. It's a main entrance to the town, and so I think commercial is and I guess let's see. Yeah, none of the other ones have commercial in them. Not that this matters terribly, but if we are kind of trying to change the connotation, then you want to change the denotation, sort of the two at the same time. I don't know. It's just, yeah.
We can give some thought
That sounds good to me.
a new name. I mean, it is, as Prudence mentions, people, well, first of all, there's a lot of people living out there. There are services there. People are crossing back and forth. It is kind of like a service center for that area. So we can give some thought about that to differentiate it from the Putney Road Service Center or.
I kind of like what you were saying. Is more like, in that particular, it's not industrial. In a sense, it's not really commercial.
Yeah.
It's more. I would say where I'm at, Canal Street is more commercial, up that way. In that,
The commercial.
you know what, you're right. And I think we need to critique that before.
Yours is 1960s commercial. That's more of like
Denser, too.
1980s, 1990s commercial.
That's true. That is
Little
more-
more auto dominated.
So it sounds like we have 4 things to move forward with for staff to kind of formalize and then bring to us for a public hearing when we start the land use reg process. The bar/drinking place, the minimum height change, the minimum lot size, and the name. Let's vote on on feeling good about moving forward with those 4. If you're in favor, well, that's the motion, as poorly
I
worded
would
as it
do
was.
it
Is
in
there,
protest, I could say it in that sense, because there's still other ways we can look at it from a different perspective, like certain areas, like Sue was saying, it could be listed in a different way, like if you go up towards the outlet, that's industrial, by just, and then if you go for certain areas, you have to have that right framework.
wait, so
for
do
it.
you not want the name changed?
I do, but
Okay.
I would like to have it.
I think that's where we're all at right now.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna let
Well,
staff
and then
give some
if we
thought
take
to it.
From that point, I guess we can all come together and brainstorm a name for that.
To me, it seems like the first 2, the bar/drinking place and the minimum height change, are more concrete. What at least what we're going forward with, but the other 2 are just like, we recognize that maybe it should be changed, but we're putting it on staff
How would you word that?
to put some thought into it.
How would you word that?
I think we're wording it however staff is writing up my word salad
I
right
think
there.
it's staff to move forward, making changes, adding bar as a use,
At a point, we're gonna make.
changing the minimum height, looking at minimum lot size and a new district name.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Gary seconds.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand, please.
If you're sure.
Gary, myself, Sarah, Dan, and Prudence. Okay, fantastic. That's
Awesome.
unanimous. Well, it's past 8, and we have that one more agenda item. I will entertain any motions to continue the meeting to a later time, not to exceed 8:30. But if there are no motions, which I'll give like 10 seconds for, then I'll hear a motion to just put that off and adjourn.
I would motion we put that off because this is.
Hold on, I was waiting for motion to extend the meeting first. I said 10 seconds, that felt a little too long. But Dan, yep.
How long do you think it'll take, Tom? 10 minutes?
I think what it is us, if we all reviewed the memo, then us saying, yeah, I like that one, let's move forward with that one, and that one, and that one. And that's all it will be. I don't know. It depends on how talkative we are. It could be 10 minutes.
Are we chatting tonight?
Let's go for it.
All right.
So what's that, to 8:15? Okay, I second it. I think we need, according to our bylaws, a majority vote. Who's in favor of that?
We can do it.
Dan and me and Gary. Okay,
we
sorry,
need a
Prudence and Sarah. I hope you don't, lose your internet connection.
That was only 3.
Yeah.
Oh, we need 4.
We need a 4.
Oh, darn, I
So
was thinking
that's-
3 out of 5.
Oh, well, that's it. The majority.
Well, hold on. Those opposed.
Please raise your hand.
Those opposed, please raise your hand. Okay. Gosh, I got to do a better job of keeping us to the time limit or scheduling less for a meeting. Okay, so that will be delayed. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion that we adjourn.
Gary motions. I forget if we need a second. Oh, if you haven't completed all your business, then you have to do a vote.
Second.
I second it. Who's in favor? We have to be in favor. We can't do anything else. So, okay. Thanks, everyone.
We need a